from May. You've talked, and we've all talked about coordination, how important and critical it is. Let's leave out the provinces for a minute because I know which way that conversation would go. My question to you is about coordination at the federal level with federal departments and agencies. Let me assume that even though coordination will be there, it can always be improved. How would you like to see it improved? And would you consider the creation of a high-level ministerial roundtable to deal with the crisis of suicide?
Yes, and I think in the next hour you'll hear what the officials have been doing on exactly that issue. I think that it's right at the moment that I have conversations with Minister Anand and Minister Haiju and Mendocino on corrections, which is one of my things. I think that the issue around prison is huge as well. But I want to start with your first question, which is I have, coveted the NHS approach, where as a family doctor, I could just go to the computer and get the young person in front of me an appointment for the next day for mental health supports. I mean, I think that we can aspire to systems that would work, but I do think that that we do have a responsibility across the federal family to have this coordinated more. I was quite surprised speaking to Scott McLeod, who's head of the regulatory authorities, who came out of the military, that the military actually on therapy have an expected response curve. And if people aren't meeting that curve, then they get a second opinion or that something comes in. So I think there are modalities that are being used in other departments that could be helpful or shown not to be helpful if we could actually get the kind of research and evidence that we think we need across the whole federal family.
Thank you, Minister. Let me pivot to my people, the South Asians in Canada, 1.6 million. And research has shown they suffer from high rates of anxiety, mood disorders, that their rates of suicide are high. You mentioned the social stigma attached to disclosing, let alone counseling. I want to ask you whether the framework as it is has evaluated appropriately the depth of the problem in the South Asian community and what it has advised you to do that you can actually translate into your action plan.
Well, I think Candace will talk a little bit more about how things are evaluated. I mean, I know when I was in Peel this summer that, learning about the South Asian Distress Center that received $150,000 to deal specifically with that community in a distress line. So I want to, I think we do want to know what happened to the money and has it worked and how do you measure what works? But, I think that, it's like the money that we've given to Taboo in Scarborough to evaluate primary care across the Black community. And are they getting enough mental health supports? The same as the Harriet Tubman Center at York that's evaluating the access to mental health supports for Black post-secondary students across the country. So I think we are starting with CIHR and with other parts of the academy to actually get the kind of answers that this committee is asking for, and that will be the basis for a serious action plan that will get results.
Thank you, Minister. Let me just remind you and your colleagues that 85% of South Asians are less likely to seek treatment than others. So let's just leave it at that. The last few, we'll close with Senator Kutcher, if we may. The minister has precisely